Imagine for a moment that something small, something almost invisible to the rushing eyes of the present, could quietly change the course of history. More often than not, that's how true transformation happens. It doesn't always arrive in the form of spectacular revolutions or deafening breakthroughs. Sometimes, it begins in silence, like the roots of the Japanese bamboo. For years, that bamboo shows no visible growth. You water it, nurture it, wait, and nothing seems to happen. Until suddenly, after years of unseen preparation, it shoots up several feet in a matter of weeks. The strength was always there, but hidden beneath the surface. Perhaps that's how we should look at the arrival of the Royal Enfield Gorilla 450. At first glance, it might seem like just another mid-displacement motorcycle 450cc with modest numbers and a simple spec sheet. Nothing that would catch the eye of someone used to superbikes pumping out 200 horsepower or more. But here's the question. What if the real revolution in motorcycling isn't found in the extremes, but in the balance? What if this seemingly modest bike is actually one of those inflection points in history that only revealed their significance years later? Take the United States, for example. Almost 75% of motorcycles sold there are 750cc or larger. In that market, a 450cc single is often seen as a stepping stone, a learner's tool before graduating to the big leagues. But look at India, Brazil, or much of Asia, and the picture is entirely different. For millions, a motorcycle like this isn't a stepping stone, it's a destination. It represents freedom, status, independence. It's the line between relying on crowded, chaotic buses and owning the ability to chart one's own course. This is where philosophy can illuminate what's happening. In Zen, there is the concept of Shoshin, the beginner's mind. It teaches used to approach things with openness, eagerness, and freedom from preconceptions, even when studying at an advanced level, to see with fresh eyes. The Gorilla 450 may not be the most powerful or technologically advanced machine on paper, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe its greatness lies in what it represents, not in how it performs on a racetrack to grasp the scale of this. Let's look at the numbers. According to the Brookings Institution, more than 110 million people join the global middle class every single year. And here's the crucial distinction. The global middle class isn't the same as the Western middle class. In the West, success might mean a two-car garage in the suburbs. In much of the developing world, success begins with mobility, often on two wheels. For millions of families, owning a mid-sized motorcycle is not just a purchase. It's a symbol. A Progress. Royal Enfield understood this reality earlier than most. A decade ago, the company was selling around 300,000 motorcycles a year. Today, it sells over 1 million annually. But here's the catch. About 85% of those sales happen in India alone. That leaves an enormous world still untapped. And it's precisely that global stage the Gorilla 450 is meant to step onto. Yes, the Gorilla brings technical first for Royal Enfield. It's the brand's first liquid-cooled single with dual overhead cams, ride-by-wire, and a 6-speed gearbox. But more than the tech itself, it's the purpose behind the project that makes it remarkable. This bike was not designed as a luxury toy or a collector's piece. It was engineered to be global, approachable, and reliable. It was created to connect markets, to bridge cultures, and to embody an idea much larger than displacement or horsepower. If we step back for a broader view, this is bigger than motorcycles. It's about how the world itself is changing. In the 20th century, the symbol of prosperity was a car parked in the driveway. In the 21st century, for hundreds of millions of people in rising economies, the motorcycle is that symbol. It is mobility, identity, and upward movement. That is why the Gorilla 450 could become a turning point, not because it redefines performance, but because it redefines access. You listening right now might ask, why does this matter to me? Because this is about more than specs, more than engineering. This bike is a mirror held up to society. It reflects the crossroads where economics, mobility, and philosophy meet. The Gorilla 450 is a motorcycle, yes, but it's also a message about who we are and where we're headed as a global community. And before we go further, before we dive even deeper into this story, I'd like to pause for a moment with a special invitation. If you appreciate this kind of content analysis that doesn't just skim the surface, but dives into the deeper meaning of the machines, the culture, and the philosophy that surround them, consider becoming a member of this channel. Your support directly fuels the time, research, and creativity behind these videos. It ensures that we can keep building a space where motorcycling isn't just about machines, but about the human stories and ideas they carry. By joining, you become part of a community that values reflection as much as horsepower. When you first ride the Royal Enfield Gorilla 450, you realize something quickly. This is not the Royal Enfield of old. The company that once leaned almost entirely on nostalgia, the clunky gearboxes, the kickstarters, the carburetors, has stepped into a different era. And that step is not just a technical update. It's symbolic of a company that's learning to balance tradition with global ambition. Let's start with the heart of the bike, the K-platform engine, nicknamed the Sherpa. For a brand steeped in history, this is nothing short of revolutionary. It's Royal Enfield's first single-cylinder engine to feature liquid cooling, dual overhead camshafts, a forged piston, a plated cylinder liner, ride-by-wire technology, and a 6-speed gearbox. If you followed Royal Enfield for decades, you know how groundbreaking this is for them. On paper, the engine produces 39.5 horsepower at 8,000 revolutions per minute and 29.5 pound-feet of torque. Respectable, but not jaw-dropping figures. But let's put this in context. The previous Himalayan's 411cc engine was heavier and less refined. This new Sherpa engine is about 10 kilograms lighter than the old L-series motor, and its semi-dry sump design allows for a relatively compact package, despite its long stroke. Nature. It may not wow riders with superbike acceleration, but it delivers something else, a sense of reliability and balance. Now, let's talk about how it feels. Accelerating onto the freeway, you need to work the throttle generously. At full commitment, you'll see around 96 miles per hour on the speedometer. That may not impress fans of high-performance twins or inline fours, but remember, this is a single-cylinder bike built with a different purpose. Royal Enfield even adjusted the final drive, adding a tooth to the rear sprocket, making it a bit more responsive in real-world riding. At 76 miles per hour in top gear, the engine spins at about 6,000 revolutions per minute. And yes, some vibrations creep in, but the balance. Shaft, rubber-mounted bars, and pegs work overtime to keep things civilized. The gearbox deserves special mention. Anyone who remembers the stubborn clunks of older Enfields will be shocked by how buttery smooth and feather-light this 6-speed transmission feels. Neutral is easier to find than on many Japanese bikes. It's so slick, in fact, that riders sometimes overshoot into second or third gear by accident. That's a problem very few riders will complain about. All this technical progress highlights an important point. Royal Enfield is not just catching up, it's rewriting its own story. And yet, here lies the conflict. In Western markets, the Gorilla 450 enters a brutally competitive field. Riders have options like the Triumph Speed 400 at $5,295, the KTM Duke 390 at $5,899, and Honda CB300R at $5,149. These bikes often boast sharper performance, more refined electronics, and reputations built over decades. On paper, the Gorilla looks like just another contender, maybe even a step behind. But Royal Enfield insists its appeal is different. They say the Gorilla doesn't feel toy-like the way some small displacement bikes do. And there's truth to that. The ergonomics, the upright seating, wide bars, and sculpted 2.9-gallon tank make it feel like a bigger motorcycle than it is. It has presence. It has character. It doesn't read like a beginner's throwaway. For a new rider in the West, or for someone wanting a practical, affordable second bike, that difference matters. This brings us to the deeper conflict. The East versus the West, and their very different expectations of motorcycles. In the West, displacement has long been equated with status. Bigger bikes mean bigger freedom. But in much of the world, success is measured not by excess, but by sufficiency. This recalls a lesson from the Taoist tradition. The river does not compete with the mountain. It flows around it, finding its path by yielding, not by fighting. While European and Japanese manufacturers chase ever higher performance, Royal Enfield has chosen the path of the river. By embracing simplicity, efficiency, and affordability, it has found a way to flow into markets others cannot reach. And the scale of this strategy is staggering. Producing over 1 million motorcycles annually, Royal Enfield has an efficiency that few companies can rival. A new Enfield rolls off the production line roughly every 40 seconds. That level of output allows them to price the Gorilla at $5,299 without cutting corners where it counts. High-volume production makes the impossible possible. Compare that to low-volume European brands that might take years to pay off a single manufacturing tool. Royal Enfield can do it in weeks. But let's not overlook the philosophical side of this conflict. For Western riders, motorcycles are often about thrill, prestige, or passion. For Eastern riders, particularly in India, South America, or Southeast Asia, motorcycles are about aspiration and upward mobility. For one rider, a bike might be weekend fun. For another, it's the very symbol of having made it. This duality gives the Gorilla a unique role. It is, in a sense, a mirror motorcycle. It reflects back something different depending on who's looking. In India, it's aspirational. In the US, it's approachable. That's a rare balance. And this raises the question, can a motorcycle that means such different things to different people truly bridge these worlds? Can a single platform satisfy the hunger for prestige in developing economies and the desire for affordable fun in developed ones? Royal Enfield seems to believe so. And their argument goes beyond the bike itself. They're building a premium ecosystem around it clubs, rides, accessories, and lifestyle branding much like Ducati or BMW, but at a fraction of the price. They're not just selling a motorcycle, they're selling a community experience. When you buy a Gorilla 450, you're not just riding off the lot, you're stepping into a story. This is why Royal Enfield insists it is a premium brand, even if the Gorilla is priced like a budget bike. Premium, they argue, doesn't mean expensive. It means an experience that continues after the sale. Through engagement, culture, and belonging. Here lies the heart of the conflict. To the Western eye, the Gorilla may not break new ground in technology or speed, but in the Eastern world, it opens doors that were previously closed. For one market, it's a compromise. For another, it's a dream fulfilled. So the question becomes, which perspective will define the future? Is motorcycling's destiny still measured by displacement and speed, or is it shifting toward accessibility, connection, and cultural relevance? As we move forward, let's hold that thought, because the answer might tell us not only where Royal Enfield is headed, but where the entire motorcycle industry is going. By now, it should be clear. The Royal Enfield Gorilla 450 is more than just another motorcycle. It is a reflection of where the world stands today, a world caught between tradition and modernity, between aspiration and accessibility, between East and West, and in that space where definitions blur, something truly powerful can emerge. In Japanese aesthetics, there is a concept called ma. It refers to the space between things, the pause that gives meaning to the notes in music, the silence that shapes the spoken word, the emptiness that makes architecture breathe. The Gorilla 450, in many ways, embodies this principle. It sits in the space between the small and the large. Between budget and premium, between the developing world and the developed. It's not too little, not too much. It is enough. And that idea of enough is transformative. In a culture where more is often equated with better, more displacement, more power, more features, the gorilla suggests another way. It says that freedom isn't always about maximizing numbers, but about making mobility possible, accessible, and meaningful. Let's bring it back to the numbers. Over the last decade, Royal Enfield has grown from selling 300,000 motorcycles annually to selling over 1 million. That is not an accident. It's the result of a deliberate strategy built on efficiency, scale, and design. More importantly, it reflects the reality that the global middle class is expanding at an astonishing pace. As mentioned earlier, the Brookings Institution estimates that 110 to 150 million people are added to the middle class each year, despite economic slowdowns, pandemics, and political turbulence. This new middle class is concentrated in places like India, Southeast Asia, and South America. And for them, a mid-sized motorcycle is not a toy, it's a declaration of having arrived. This is why the gorilla matters. In India, it's aspirational. In Brazil and Argentina, it's already helping Royal Enfield secure the second and third largest market shares. In the US and Europe, it positions itself as an affordable runabout, a stylish commuter, or even a second bike for riders who want simplicity alongside their more complex machines. Here we see the brilliance of the strategy. One motorcycle that speaks two different languages. To one audience, it says, "You've made it." To another, it says, "You don't need excess to enjoy the ride." That dual identity could make the Gorilla 450 not just a success, but a symbol of how global motorcycling itself is changing. And let's not forget what Royal Enfield itself is aiming for. Their executives are clear. The goal is to become the #1 mid-size motorcycle brand globally, with a 25% market share in each of their key markets. That's not a modest ambition. That's a declaration of intent. And when you consider their current scale, their efficiency, and their cultural momentum, it's not hard to imagine them pulling it off. But beyond strategy and numbers, let's circle back to the philosophy. There is another Japanese concept worth mentioning here, ikigai. It describes the point where passion, mission, vocation, and profession intersect. In other words, the reason for being. If we apply that lens, what is the Gorilla 450's ikigai? It seems to live at the intersection of love for motorcycles, the need for mobility in a changing world, the affordability required by the new middle class, and the joy of riding something that feels authentic without being extravagant. It's not the fastest, not the most advanced, not the most luxurious, but it fulfills a purpose precisely and beautifully. And that's what makes this bike so fascinating. The Triumph Speed 400 may edge it in performance. The KTM Duke 390 may dazzle with its high-tech aggression. The Honda CB300R may offer bulletproof reliability. But none of them are selling 1 million motorcycles a year. None of them carry the cultural cachet of a brand that has been made like a gun for 125 years and has suddenly become one of the most globally ambitious manufacturers on the planet. So where does this leave us? In a world where consumers are taught to always want more, the Gorilla 450 dares to remind us of the value of enough. In Zen, enlightenment is not about reaching some distant destination, but about realizing the beauty of the path itself. Likewise, in motorcycling, maybe freedom isn't about the biggest engine or the fastest speed. Maybe it's about the ability to ride, to belong, to move. This is why the Gorilla 450 feels like more than a motorcycle. It feels like a statement. It suggests that the future of motorcycling might not belong exclusively to the extremes two, the superbikes and adventure flagships, but to the middle ground, to the millions who want a bike that's attainable, reliable, and meaningful. Think about it. In the United States, it might serve as a fun, affordable commuter or weekend escape. Machine. In India, it might be the very symbol of mobility and progress for a family. One bike, two worlds, connected by the same engine. That is powerful. That is rare, and perhaps that's the lasting lesson here. In the Japanese art of kintsugi, broken, pottery is repaired with golden lacquer, emphasizing the cracks instead of hiding them. The result is something stronger, more beautiful because of its imperfections. The Gorilla 452 may not be perfect. It vibrates at speed, its TFT display can feel clumsy, and it doesn't outgun its rivals on specs. But in those imperfections lies its character, and in its character lies its appeal. So as we close this journey, let's return to the bigger picture. The Gorilla 450 is not just a machine. It is a bridge between markets, between classes, between philosophies of what a motorcycle should be. And bridges, after all, are what allow us to cross from one world into another. The real question, then, is not whether the Gorilla 450 is good enough by Western standards. The question is, what does it reveal about the kind of world we are becoming? A world where millions of new riders are stepping onto the global stage. A world where mobility and meaning are becoming just as important as horsepower and speed. A world where the future of motorcycling may be decided not at the top of the mountain, but in the quiet flowing strength of the river. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the Gorilla 450's true power lies. Not in its acceleration chart or top speed, but in its ability to symbolize something larger than itself. The rise of a new middle class. The democratization of mobility. The reminder that enough can, in fact, be extraordinary.